Welcome to our Workflow Builder Guide. Here we will construct a basic approval workflow from the ground up. The first step is to rename the workflow and change its color and icon. Currently, there is a single state labeled as the initial state. The workflow will always start in the initial state when applied to a page or blog post. You can update this initial state later from the right sidebar to a different state. Next, we rename the state. Let's call it Work in Progress, because at this stage, we're still refining the page. You can also assign it a unique color and icon. Once the author finishes drafting, they should be able to hand it off to their manager. To facilitate this, we need a follow-up state. By clicking on the blue circle icon below the state, we can create a new state. There are two options for transitioning to a new state, by selection and by approval. The by approval option transitions to the next state based on the reviewer's decision. The by selection option allows the page author to manually transition to the next state. As we want the page to be handed off to a manager manually, we'll select the by selection option. This leaves us with a blue handle that we can drag from or click on to create the new state. The newly created state should be our approval state, so let's rename it to reflect this. Additionally, we will change the color and icon of the state. In this state, we want the manager to either approve or reject the page. Here we need to select by approval, which will provide us with two handles, one for when the page is approved and another for when it's rejected. Let's create these two transitions again by dragging or clicking. We should also rename the two new states we've created and update their colors accordingly. Excellent! This forms the basic structure of our workflow. Now let's configure each step to do exactly what we want. When the workflow is applied to the page, we will begin in the Work in Progress state. At this point, we need to implement a page restriction to limit access to the page, ensuring it's not publicly accessible. We can use an action to achieve this. The actions will be executed whenever the workflow enters the associated state. In this case, we can use the Add Restriction action. By saving this, our workflows will ensure that all stakeholders always have access to the page. Initially, only the author will have access. However, as soon as we reach the In Approval state, all approvers will also gain access. The only task left for us is to publicize our page once we reach the Approved state. We can accomplish this by using another action. We can either use the Publish Page action, which is designed for more complex scenarios, allowing us to sync content between spaces, or we can simply remove the restriction, which is a simpler solution. We will choose the latter option in this case. Next, we need to configure our approval in the In Approval state. For this, we need to select some reviewers. You have the option to select individual reviewers or entire groups. We will select our manager group, which we have previously set up in Confluence. You have the flexibility to use any group or reviewer that you prefer. We've decided to disallow ad hoc reviewers as we want to be strict about who has the authority to review the page. However, we plan to initially notify reviewers via email for approvals. We've set the requirement that two people must approve the page before it transitions to the approved state. For rejections, we've decided to be more stringent, requiring only one rejection to transition to the rejected state. You can update the states from this drop-down right here, selecting the state you want to transition to. Our next requirement is that whenever a page is updated, it should revert to the Work in Progress state. This is because any updates render the current approvals inaccurate. The same principle applies to other states. There are two ways you can transition to other states automatically. In Aura workflows, these are referred to as events. The two main events are the On-Page Edit event and the On-Expiration event. The On-Expiration event simply transitions to a new state after a certain period of time. The On-Page Edit event occurs whenever the page is edited, which is exactly what we want in this case. Therefore, when the page is edited during the approval process, we want it to revert back to Work in Progress. This should also be the case for other states. A quick way to implement this is by dragging from the page updated icon to the desired state. Let's do this for all states. Perfect. The final thing we want to do is reset the workflow if the approval process takes too long. For this, we can use the expiration event, which is also accessible from the sidebar. Let's activate this and set our expiration to 30 days. Again, we want to revert back to the work in progress state. This concludes our basic approval workflow. Now, all that's left to do is save the workflow. That's all for now. See you in the next video.